Hello students, let's understand about sources of international law as it forms a very important part of the syllabus. Now when we talk about sources of international law, directly we discuss about the Statute of International Court of Justice, particularly Article 38, because it highlights all the sources of international law. See, A, B, C and D. So let's go through what has been provided under Article 38 of Statute of ICJ. So it says the court, that is International Court of Justice, whose function is to decide in accordance with international law, such disputes as are submitted to it shall apply. So when cases are submitted before the International Court of Justice, it will apply based on whatever has been provided here. Let's go through what has been provided here. A. International conventions, whether general or particular, establishing rules expressly recognized by contesting states. So these international conventions are also referred as international treaties. Now generally, or from a positivist point of view, these treaties have been given a higher preference because these international treaties are based on state consent or consent of all the state. And hence these are given preference over other, you can say, other sources of international law. Then international custom as evidence of a general practice accepted as law. See, these terms are very important, the way it has been written. Only customary international law has not been written. What has been written here is that international custom as evidence of a general practice accepted as law. And when we talk about international customary international law, then it comprises of two parts. It comprises of actual state practice, that whatever the state practices, let's say there is no law of the sea and state practices 6 mile distance, whereby within 6 miles they can, or the coastal states can go for fishing. And if they believe, the other element of customary international law is the belief that whatever they are practicing is they are legally bound by it. And hence this belief is referred as opinio juris. So don't get confused. Opinio juris is not opinion of the jurist. It's the intention of the parties, intention of the states to be bound by such state practices. That's why positivists generally prefer international treaties and customary international law as a better source of international law. Right? Third, general principles of law recognized by civilized nations. Now, what are these general principles of law? The general principles of law are such as, for example, res judicata, for example, principle of indemnity, such as principle of good faith, conscience, etc. So, these general principles of law helps to fill the void or fill the gap which has been left behind after international treaty and customary international law. So let's say whatever has not been covered by the first two is covered through the third, that is general principles of law. And the first, these three, that is international treaty, customary international law and general principles of law, are referred as formal sources of law or also referred as law creating agencies. Please understand this. This is a very important part. It's not that you only have to know the sources, but within the sources, what are the parameters? What are the nuances? What are the legality? So it's formal sources constitute treaty, customary international law and general principles of law as recognized by civilized states. Again, this point has been criticized, but let's understand the crux of it. So primary or direct sources of law are considered formal in nature. Formal source is the source from which the legal rule derive its legal validity. So let's say if there are certain international practices which has been converted into a customary international law or a treaty law, then yes, that has been given legal recognition under international law. And that's why these three, international treaty, customary international law and general principles of law, are considered as formal sources of law and also referred as law creating agencies. And that's why I have drawn this blue line here between A, B, C and D. So D refers to this part, material sources. So what are material sources? Referred as law determining agencies. So they determine the rule of law. Now why I'm saying this? Let's go through what has been highlighted here. It says subject to the provisions of Article 59. So very clearly, we need to go through what has been highlighted in Article 59. Then we'll understand. And Article 59 says, decision of the court has no binding force except between the parties and in respect of that particular case. So from a legal point of view, according to the statute of ICJ, the decision of ICJ is binding only on the parties who have submitted the dispute before the ICJ. And from a legal point of view, it's not binding on other states. However, as a part of precedent and obviously as a part of civilized community, the entire international community, as we can say, all the countries follow the decisions of International Court of Justice. So it says, subject to the provisions of Article 59, judicial decisions and the teachings of most highly qualified publicists of various nations as a subsidiary means for the determination of rules of law. So what sort of law are these? What sort of a source of international law are these? Subsidiary means for the determination of rule of law. So the decision of ICJ in itself is not a formal or a primary source of international law, but rather a material source of international law. And then comes this part, 38 clause 2. This is something else. It says, this provision shall not prejudice the power of the court to decide a case ex equo et bono if the parties agree thereto. Now, courts generally do not resort to ex equo et bono, means deciding a case outside the legal boundaries, and it is considered bad in law. So what the court does, ICJ generally what it does is that they try to decide a case under this part, under the general principles of law. And they hardly, or they have never resorted to ex equo et bono. Because if you resort to ex equo et bono, then you can violate any of the legal principles or customary international law which has been established. And obviously it is considered bad in law. So these are the, we can say, the sources of international law, which is also followed by International Court of Justice itself, provided under Article 38 of Statute of ICJ. Now, why was Statute of ICJ enacted? Statute of ICJ was enacted to replace the PCIJ statute, or the Statute of Permanent Court of International Justice. And this is what has been highlighted in its Article 1. See what it says? International Court of Justice, established by the Charter of UN, United Nations as the principal judicial organ of the United Nations, shall be constituted and shall function in accordance with the provisions of the present statute. Okay? So when we talk about these material sources, these sources provide evidence of existing rules. So you have to collect these evidence based on it you can determine, let's say, whether it is part of customary international law, whether it comes within one of the definitions of international treaties, or whether it is a part of general principles of law. So it will depend on that evidence which can be gathered. So these sources provide evidence of existing rules which, when proved, have the effect of binding rules. So they have to be proved. They themselves are not law. Secondary or subsidiary sources of law or indirect or inspirational sources of law are considered material in nature. And unlike formal sources, material sources cannot by themselves confer legal status on any rule. So let's say if there is any actual state practice, then by itself is not a law unless and until it is proved that that actual state practice combined with opinio juris actually forms part of customary international law. These sources provide evidence of existing rules which, when proved, have the effect of binding rules. Now, other than these sources, obviously there are other sources as well which various countries in their relations with each other establish. Let's say if there is an official opinion, let's say advisory of India or official opinion of India on any matter of international aspect, then that is also considered as a source of international law. So these are also considered as additional sources of international law, which includes international committee or practices implemented through courtesy and not legally binding, UN General Assembly resolutions, UN Security Council resolutions, just cogent norms, that is, which are the higher norms of international law which cannot be derogated, such as two countries cannot enter into a agreement to start slavery. Peremptory norm of general international law, provided also under Article 26 of Vienna Convention on the Law of the Treaties. Advisory opinion of ICJ and PCIJ. International law commissions draft articles or their opinion or their recommendations on certain points. State papers, that is, state papers given by various countries. state guidance for their officers. Let's say if they are participating in any international convention or any international treaty, whatever guidance has been provided forms part of actual state practice. Reason, equity, and justice, resolutions of international conferences, and decisions of municipal courts on matters pertaining to other nationals or states. So let's say the local courts, or suppose the Supreme Court of India, gives certain decisions on any aspect of international law, or any other Supreme Court or other courts of other countries, and if they pertain to certain general principles, they're often resorted to. Often. So these are some of the additional sources of international law. Now, other than this, another issue which arises with respect to international law is that, is there any hierarchy of international law? If we go back to this thing, as you can see, as per the law, there is no hierarchy, or from a positivist point of view, also from a perspective of legal drafting history, no hierarchy has not been provided. But whatever has been provided here, as per the listing, it is considered. These sources are considered in the same order. So international treaty is given preference, followed by customary international law, followed by general principles of law, followed by the decisions of ICJ, as well as opinion of the highly qualified jurist. So, is there any hierarchy? Law does not say so, but in practice, this is what has been followed. But another question is that, can customary international law be given preference over an international treaty? The answer is yes. Can a general principle of law be given preference over customary international law or over international treaty? The answer is yes. And it has been highlighted in Nicaragua case, another very important point, that let's say there was a customary international law which was in force. Let's say there was certain customary international law which was in force, and certain states converted this customary international law into a treaty, into a international treaty. So the question is that, when this customary international law is converted into an international treaty, that is, it is codified. When we say converted, it means codified. The provisions has been written as a part of the statute, as part of the law, and it has been accepted by the states. Question is then, what happens to this customary international law? Does it still exist, or does it vanishes? The court held in Nicaragua judgment, Nicaragua case, Nicaragua versus United States of America, that even if a customary international law is converted or codified into an international treaty, then still customary international law does not vanishes. It continues parallelly or along with the international treaty. And talking about Article 38 Clause 2, ex equo et bono, as I've said, that it gives the contesting states the right to find a solution outside the legal boundaries. But courts so far have not resorted to Article 38 Clause 2. So these are some of the important highlights, or these are the important aspects of sources of international law. Thank you very much.